Welcome back to BYoungMinistry.blogspot.com to another blog from the Gospel according to John. Welcome to those of you who are accessing the podcast through the Be Young Ministry YouTube page. And I might mention to those who have not subscribed to the Be Young Ministry YouTube page, it's easy to do. Just dial it up on YouTube, just type in Be Young Ministry and it'll come up. Click on to subscribe and then a bell will appear. Click that bell, and that bell, when you click that bell, you will automatically get updates as they are made. Today we're in John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, which reads, "But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn he appeared again in the temple, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?' They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, 'Let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her.' Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, 'Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?' 'No one, sir,' she said. 'Neither do I condemn you,' declared Jesus. 'But now, or go now, and leave your life of sin.'" That's John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. The religious leaders went to their homes, and the Lord Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. You know, Jesus on many occasions went to the Mount of Olives. He did so to pray and to teach. And then early in the morning, he came once again to the temple. And all the people came to him. He sat down and taught them. Contrary to the format of today's classroom, where the teacher stands and the pupil sits, in their culture, the teacher sat and the pupils stood. It was in this context that the scribes and Pharisees brought a woman whom they had caught in adultery. Then they asked him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" That's the wrong question. The right question is, how did the religious leaders catch her in the act? And what happened to the man with whom she was committing adultery? She was framed. The scribes and Pharisees were trying to trip up the Lord Jesus. So they bring this woman to her, or to him, and ask him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. And the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" These scribes and Pharisees remind the Lord Jesus that according to the law of Moses, adultery was to be punished by stoning. They expected the Lord not to punish this woman. And if he did that, he would be contradicting the law. And they would have him. They thought for sure they had him. The Lord Jesus wrote on the ground. The scribes and Pharisees thought he was stalling for time, and they kept pressing him, asking him again and again to answer them. and tell them what he would do with the guilty woman. At that point, standing up, the Lord Jesus looked at the religious leaders and spoke these famous words: "Let any of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." This is the only time the Lord Jesus ever employed the word "without sin" in the Gospels. The Lord Jesus upheld the law, and the scribes and Pharisees were speechless. They had nothing to say. They didn't expect his response. The Lord Jesus is effectively saying to these religious leaders, "You are no better off than she is. Your hearts are filled with murder and hatred." Again in verse 8, the Lord Jesus writes something on the ground, and people have speculated what he wrote. If we were meant to know what he wrote, he would have told us. So it's nothing but speculation. According to verse 9, at this those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. The scribes and Pharisees disappeared, beginning with the oldest, ending with the youngest. The oldest departed first because they were deemed to be the first to cast a stone at the woman due to their seniority. Of course, they dropped their stones. They had to drop their case against this woman, this trumped up charge. Yes, she was guilty, but they were just as guilty. You see, the point is not that judges must be sinless. The point is righteousness and justice should be founded on a gracious spirit. And if it is not, what you get is the heartlessness and the hypocrisy of the religious. The Lord Jesus put these guys in their place. I love it. When her accusers were all gone, Jesus ends the story saying to her, "Then neither did I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." The guilty woman found herself forgiven. She has no human accusers because God had dismissed her jury. Her jury wasn't a jury of her peers. Her jury was God himself, the one who deemed things good or evil. The Lord Jesus alone had the right to condemn this woman. He was the sinless one. He is the sinless one. The only one who fulfilled the qualifications to stone, but he did not even pick up a stone. It was because he forgave her of her sin. Only God can forgive sin, for it is against his standard that we have rebelled. Without forgiveness, justice must be satisfied. God never dismisses sin as though it is not significant. His truth, his holy character demands that any rebellion toward righteousness be punished. Justice must be satisfied, unless sin is forgiven. So it is clear that the basis on which the Lord Jesus said these words to this woman is that he forgave her of her sin. This is the pervasive message of the New Testament. The Lord Jesus came into the world to provide grace through his cross, to establish holiness, righteousness, and justice through our experience with his grace. Then those who have had this experience with his grace should sin no more. Now, it's not our sinlessness that merits God's forgiveness. No, 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 no. Never can be, because we'll never be sinless. No, it's what we do with His grace. It's what we do with Him. The Lord Jesus isn't commanding sinlessness. He is calling us to see the utter foolishness of pursuing a life not defined by Him. My friends, I trust this podcast, this blog, is of help to you in your walk with the Lord. If I can be of further assistance to you, do not hesitate to shoot me an email at BYoungMinistry@gmail.com. Hey, have a great day.